BizSchool is brought to you by Neon Canvas. Neon Canvas is a digital marketing boutique. You can find more about Neon Canvas at neoncanvas.com. Welcome, here it goes. This is the 7th episode of BizSchool with Alex Rasmussen. I'm going to be teaching you all things business, and today we're going to be joined by my colleague and art director, Curt Crocker. Curt and I have been working together, building brands all across the country, and we're going to dive deep today into how you can build a great brand. So on the show tonight, we're going to discuss what elements make up a great brand, how to create a memorable brand, activating your brand, and then when it's time to rebrand. In my opinion, branding is what business owners mess up the most. There's a host of different reasons that they do this. So I want to help people avoid those mistakes that they make early on. And so that's the reason that if you're a startup, whether you're buying a business or you're rebranding, this episode is going to be huge for you to bookmark and share with other people. The first reason I think people mess up branding is because they just don't have money in the early days of their business to hire an expert. And I completely understand this. I've been involved in several ventures where that was the case. The second most common reason I think people mess this up is they just get too hung up on their own preferences. They know what they like, kind of thing. Oh, I know what I like and I don't like that. We see that quite a bit. The third thing I think business owners get wrong is that they get too many opinions on it. It's like, death by 1,000 cuts, revision after revision. And at the end, they just end up getting something that's super generic. It's been stripped down too much. So with that, I want to bring in Curt to help you guys avoid these mistakes and talk about how you can build an amazing brand. Curt Crocker is a Memphis native and a graphic design expert. After studying graphic design at the University of Memphis in 2013, he spent some time in Houston working on marketing. And then he moved back to Memphis in 2015, where Curt started working with Signature Advertising, and that's how I started working with Curt. Flash forward to today, and Curt's happily married with his wife, Kristen, with 2 rescue dogs, Mud and Malou, and spends his days as a senior art director building brands that truly make their mark. So, Curt, let's talk about branding. How many brands do you estimate that you've worked with?
Man, since I've started doing graphic design, I would probably say a few hundred, if not several hundred.
Wow.
Yeah. Dating back to like 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that qualifies you as an expert. I'd like to make a motion for the record that Curt is an expert on branding with over 300 brands under his belt. And that's various different projects, whether it's working within brand standards that have already been created by somebody else or completing a completely new brand from scratch for a new business, rebranding for somebody that's had an existing logo for years and it's time to rebrand, or even practice purchases or business purchases where you've got somebody coming in and kind of wanting to put their own mark on something that's existed for a long time. Of all that, what is your favorite to work on?
Brand identity is definitely like my favorite aspect of graphic design and what I do on a day-to-day. But logo design, I love making logos, kind of giving a business, a company one memorable mark that, people look at this one thing and then associate it with a much bigger thing, a bigger company, a bigger service, and logos are cool. I've always loved logos. As a kid, I grew up drawing skateboard logos and band logos on everything. My school books were covered with them. And then going through high school, I didn't do schoolwork. I just drew all day in school, and so I'm going to college. I'm like, I don't know what I want to go to college for. And, I was like, I like to draw, and so that kind of pushed me through the door into like a degree in graphic design. And once I started diving into it, realized like, this is what I love to do, And so, I would definitely say that logo work and, and that's just one aspect of branding and company identity, but it's probably my favorite.
What are all the elements of a brand? We know some of the obvious ones like a mark, a logo. What are some of the other things that go into making a complete brand?
Well, there's a lot of things that create like brand standards,
Colors.
Yeah, the color
Fonts.
palette, the font choice. A lot of times it's like the visual look of advertisements, whether it's digital ads, web banners, or any of that. And also, there's most of the time there's like a graphic language that we create, and it's not just a logo that's specific to the brand. It's like these little graphic elements that we put into all these pieces that we do for people, whether it's like a pattern that's in the background or it's a particular shape that we've grabbed from the logo and now we're putting a photo in it, or, knocking that color out of a photo, and so it's like that's also part of like the brand library, so to speak, but I mean, the brand can go into all these other aspects of a business, whether it's, the way that the interior design's set up, the color of the wall, the service can have characteristics to it, whether it's like a personality or an attitude.
Chick-fil-A is my pleasure.
Exactly.
It becomes part of their brand.
Yeah, absolutely. They could trademark that probably, and, there's just so many things that go into it, but I mean, a brand is like all encompassing, really, and we're kind of focusing on like, with what we do and like what I do in graphic design is like the visual aspect of it,
Right. Well, I want to break it down and really help our audience understand the different various elements that go into a brand, how to build a brand, where to start, because in my opinion, the things like the Chick-fil-A My Pleasure kind of grow over time, right? They grow into your brand. The mark is kind of created from day one, so to speak, right? As soon as you sort of reach out into the release a website or release your first marketing piece, you're oftentimes releasing your brand out there into the public. So I want to talk about that thing. So I went into the 3 big mistakes that people make in the branding process. Give me your take on the best way to build a brand, start A to Z.
I mean, it all starts with a conversation, figuring out, what the service is, what sets this service apart from its competitors, and what the person who owns this business or service, what is like their core values, what they really want to embody with this brand, a lot of times they don't know, and so that's for us to kind of fill in the blanks, and kind of build that idea and concept for them. But definitely there's like the big initial part is like the discovery, figuring out, doing some research and, figuring out, things about the service and, things that can be unique for this particular
differentiators. Yeah. I mean, you have to start creating an emotional connection to who and what you are, and that happens. I mean, anybody can buy a car. Why are they going to buy a car from you? Or anybody can, there's a million places you can build a website. Why are you going to build a website with Neon Canvas, right? So these types of questions are the questions you need to start trying to answer in your branding process.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
one of the things I like to do is I really like to look at brands that I have emotional connections with that have been impactful for me over time when I'm looking at a brand. What is it that I like about them? I'm not trying to copy it. I'm just trying to feel what it is that impulses me to like that brand. Brands I can think of like Nike over time, the Be Like Mike campaigns and the Little Penny campaign. I mean, those are big parts of my culture growing up. You couldn't fast forward through commercials when I was growing up. That wasn't a thing. So you had to, the commercials had to be engaging. And I think a lot of Coke commercials at the holidays, with the polar bears and the Budweiser Clydesdales and the frogs and just all these, kind of culturally iconic things that impacted us over time. I try to bring in every project we work on, you try to bring that thought level to that project, right? Of if I'm going to have a sphere of influence over a certain amount of people, what do I want people to feel and think about when they see my brand? And I think trying to figure out how to make that come to life is the most important piece of the branding process. It's not easy to do.
Yeah. I mean, you always want to have that emotional connection with whatever you see out there, whether it's in marketing, and for the person who's viewing it to see more than just what it is, maybe piece together a story about it, in their head, whether it's the imagery, working with the headline and all that, and so that's always like the goal, and I think that's a key to like good marketing.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite marks and logos out there?
Oh, well, I mean, from a marketing standpoint, and just kind of, I mean, what Apple does with their brand is phenomenal. They're ahead of the curve every time. And their website's always changing. The user interface is always, something you've never really seen before, and so my hat's off to them for always like setting like the standard, or setting like what you can do,
right? Right.
But some brands that I really like right now, like there's an outdoor brand in Colorado called Topo Designs, and what they do with their graphics and their brand it's just so different than it's an outdoor apparel company, but they're not going into like the kind of desaturated earth tones that you think most outdoor brands doing. They're doing like kind of bold and bright colors and kind of funky patterns and it's pretty interesting. And also, I guess another brand is Cotopaxi. They do a lot of repurposed bags, outdoor equipment, and it's Gear for Good is like their headline, their tagline. So it's like when you buy a bag from Cotopaxi, they give a bag to somebody who's in need. So that's like their angle, and it's a good company. It's one of those companies that's easy to get behind.
Right. Yeah. The Tom's model.
Yeah. Exactly.
The social giving, the 1-for-1 idea, which I think is a brilliant idea. I mean, why would you not steal that if you're in retail? Put a mission. That's what we talked about earlier. That emotional connection behind your brand immediately. I think that's such a huge. And again, you've got to tell that story in some way. So if it's not through your logo, they've probably got some type of little card attached to their packages when you get them, and you get and they're telling you about their mission, so that you're bought into that mission, right? You're a part of that. You've helped somebody else, in some part of the world. Tell me about the direction, because I think this is where business owners really get messed up. So I want to make this like a little nugget that we get to break out and run over and over again on social media. Mm-hmm. What direction does a business owner need to give to a designer in order to get the best results? Give me your best case scenario for direction from a business owner. Well,
I think it's communication, clear communication, whether it's knowing like exactly what you don't want. You say, there's a company, a competitor, and they've got purple on everything, and I don't want purple, and I want something other than that, like that's some clear communication.
Knowing what you don't want.
Knowing what you don't want, and knowing what you're open to, and knowing what you're not open to, because sometimes business owners, they want to have this particular thing in their logo, or is some particular graphic incorporated. They want that to be like a staple, whether it be a bird or, the shape of a house or something like that.
Right.
And to get that, let that be known like right off the bat, that we want to incorporate this, instead of doing iterations of, logos and then that come into surface.
They say, oh, well, we want a bird. We really wanted a bird in our logo.
Right, yeah.
Like, oh, let's start with that.
Uh-huh.
So very clear direction up front, knowing of the elements that you want to see.
Yeah, and, particulars about what they want or what they don't want. And then if they don't know, let us know that. Say, it's like, I really don't know what I want my logo to embody and to look like. And then so that now puts the ball in our court, with that, and
right.
Gives us the opportunity to kind of creatively flex, and which is always fun,
Right. How do you get an idea of what they like? What do you ask for? Do you ask for Pinterest boards or mood boards, or what is something that someone could gather, do a little homework on their end before coming to you that would make your job that much better and make the end result that much better?
Every case is different, but a good standard that I like is for the client to pull some images of some logos that they like or some graphics that they like, or just, a lot of times we can get a good idea of what they want their brand to embody by sending some photos of like some interiors or some textures that they like, and you can get an idea if like they like, pretty an elegant look, or like a bold, bright look, or a kind of toned back, monochromatic look, and so you can kind of get, so really any kind of visual, and a lot of times you can put those things together and make a mood board, but, we're typically the ones that do that. And so a client, they can just grab some images, a whole mess of stuff and send it. And then we can kind of get a good idea of, what they like and grab, maybe some ideas from that. But other times, that's not always like the best approach, and I think it's, you got to kind of feel it out, case by case to see if you're going to get more information from a phone call, because some people just don't work visually, you know?
And sometimes these are very transactional business relationships where they've hired someone over the internet or 99 Design. They're not even talking to anybody. They're just like, and so there's a lot of that can get missed. So I really want to hone down and figure out, for me, I really think this is important. If you can get together the things that you like and submit those and with good, clear direction along with the things you don't like, then the first version of what you get should be very close to what you were hoping for, in my opinion. And then a lot of times I love my designers. I think I've worked with you and Trenton and Kira and Cam, and before that Noah, and we've had some really, really incredible designers on our team in the past and have influenced our work and our marks and logos and things that we do. And I love almost everything that they do. So if they give me, you do this all the time, I see 4 or 5 options, I'm like, I love them all, and so I think it's really important to be open-minded about that. And then in that moment where you're overwhelmed and you like them all, then start to lean into the experts. At least that's what I do. If I like them all, then I'm going to come back to Curt and say, Curt, I like all these. Which one would you pick? And I may not end up picking that one, but I at least want to know what the pro thinks, right? The guy that, who was in the image. So I think that's one of the most important things you can do is, if you're not sure, to lean into that expert, ask your designer what they like, what direction do you think they should go. Do you find that's easy to do in most client relationships, to build that trust and rapport with them, to get them to listen to you, or do you find that to be a struggle?
For the most part, I think, if we're hired by a client, like they trust us, and they trust what we're going to do and the decisions that we make, but there's always, different personalities that, want to have a little more control over things and, kind of steer stuff into what they envision, and it may be in line with, what I think would work, and it may not, but the end result needs to be functional. It needs to have a purpose, and the client needs to love it,
Right. Well, I definitely want to find out from you, exactly what you look for at the end of a great branding project. Like, when do you say stop? When do you say, okay, this has made it? What do you look for in that?
Theoretically, I could never be done, with a project. I could just keep going and going with it, and so sometimes I have to make myself stop and say, this is good. This is what I need to show, because it's real easy to get carried away if you're really feeling and loving what you're doing and start implementing different ways to create this mark with this text and putting on this color and within this shape and then this pattern, And so sometimes
hundreds and millions of options.
Yeah, so a lot of times and that's why deadlines are good, because deadlines, it's a hard stop, there. But if I didn't have one, I could just keep fleshing it out. And
so that's good feedback, is to set deadlines with your designer and say, hey, how about we promise to look at something by next Friday? Yeah.
But yeah, so there's usually if there's a mark that I created and it works big, small, one color, multiple colors, and then in different applications, whether it's just a mark by itself or it works within some sort of like shape or a graphic, that's usually like a good indicator. Like, all right, this is developed enough that the client can take a look at it.
So let's recap some of this stuff. So I think the best way to get the greatest result at the end is, one, start with a good conversation with your designer, whether that's a long typed out email of your thoughts and wants and desires and some type of reply from there, but have some type of discovery to start out with one another. Is that right? That's kind of step one. Step two is identify the things that you really like and the things that you don't like, and get that information over to your designer so that they can stew on that, right? And then step three is to get out of the way and let the designer do their thing, but set some deadlines so that you've got some time to get back together. That designer's got to make some choices and get some stuff in front of you. How many different versions should they be looking at? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 1? What's your take on that?
Well, sometimes we do multiple revisions. It's always great when you hit a home run right off the bat and the client comes back and says, this is the one that I want, Doesn't happen too often, but when it does happen, it's great. But usually, they don't usually get this far, but 5 revisions, at that point, it's kind of like, all right, we need to have another conversation and discuss something, because usually if we haven't gotten it in 5 revisions of a logo, then you may need another conversation, So that's usually the mark that I go by.
Nice. Good. 5 revisions.
Yeah.
That's
pushing it. That's kind of pushing it. But everyone's
if you have the budget for 5 revisions.
Right, yeah.
I'm kidding. What should at minimum a logo cost someone? I mean, we know 99 Designs. I mean, you can get it for $100, but if someone is going to hire a professional, what type of investment should they be looking at?
I mean, I would say, and it's always different, and pricing and stuff like that. It's that's the agency's job, but a couple grand, I think is a good investment for a logo. And you mentioned like those 99 Designs online, and it's funny you mentioned that, because just the other day a client was talking about it, and I went on there and I put in the information about the logo and got 5 logos like instantly, and it was and I made up like a donut shop, and then I did another one about a finance company. And 2 of the same marks from the donut shop were in the finance company.
Same mark.
Yeah, they don't mean anything. They're just a shape and a color, And it has no ties to the service, and I'd never done that, so I did that the other day, and I thought it was kind of funny.
That is funny.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best thing to realize, the difference between a 99 Designs or even somebody you're just kind of hired as off the internet, or maybe somebody is that they're going to start with very basic elements of shapes and things that they're comfortable with. Whereas when you're hiring a Curt, you're getting something that goes from your brain into paper and then from paper into digital version. Like, this is a very customized process.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And it's a really cool process too. I really enjoy watching it all to come together. It's one of my favorite things. I think you got to have a great brand, and that's why we started kind of going down the path of, okay, in BizSchool, since I started this podcast, kind of how you start your business, and now the brand is the first thing you got to roll out there. So I think that's super important. I want to wrap it up with something I like to do at the end of the show. It's a little bit fun. I like to call 3 things. I'm going to give you 3 things, and you've got to make some decisions. You're going to choose the one that you want. So you only get to keep one. You got to discard one so nobody gets it. You'll never see it again. And the other one you got to give away to somebody. I love doing this. It's always really good insight on kind of where people are at in their lives and what they value. So let's do it. I'm going to give your 3 choices as $1 million. That's choice number 1. Choice number 2 is a paid month-long sabbatical in the wilderness, and you can take a long month and a long weekend on that. And the last one is going to be a vacation home in the Rockies. So you only get to keep one of these. You get to keep one. You get to give the other one away, so perhaps you could give it to somebody who might let you, get in on, maybe a wife or somebody.
Yeah.
So you got to think through that. And then the last one would be a paid month-long sabbatical in the wilderness, which you need to do now before you have kids, because I can tell you once you have kids, if you're choosing that one, it's over, bro.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
$1 million would be nice.
It would be.
But I think I'd be all right without it, but I'd probably know somebody who could really use it. So I might give that away. And a vacation home in the Rockies or a month-long sabbatical in the wilderness.
yeah, you got to pick one.
I'm keeping the home in the Rockies because that's a lifelong thing that we'll have forever.
Yeah.
And I'd probably, even though I'd hate to do it, is throw away the month-long sabbatical in the wilderness because I can go on backpacking trips,
Yeah, you don't need a month.
I would throw that one away, even though I'd hate to throw it away, but I'd throw it away.
Yeah, that was good. I really enjoyed that. I think that's one to save for the books. I like those. We were able to come up with some good ones for you, Curt. Man, I really enjoyed this, and I appreciate you coming on. I think you obviously did an awesome job. You're an incredible designer and artist, and I really enjoy getting to work with you. And I think our clients don't realize how lucky they are to get to work with you. So I wanted to bring them on camera and kind of show you, like, man, you guys are lucky that you have somebody like this who's working on your brand. I mean, you could be doing it for the biggest companies in the world, and do it for some of the biggest companies in the world, and have done it for some of the biggest companies in the world. So with that, I want to wrap it up. I want to thank you, Curt, for coming in. You can find Curt actually on Instagram to see kind of the stuff he's into. It's kind of cool. He's at @IAM_Redbeard. So IAM_Redbeard, and the underscore is actually just the actual underscore. You don't spell that out. And that's it. So good night. You don't want to miss the next episode. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave us a review. Those 5-star reviews help us grow the podcast. It's been an incredible response. Really appreciate all the feedback from the show, so keep it coming. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me. It means a lot, and the rest is history.